Hello everyone. That sounded like I was about to get you to come into my cult. Hello my beautiful, amazing, wonderful, perfect friends. Today I am reading the third episode of viewer submissions, your stories that you have emailed for me to read. When I say the support has been overwhelming, that's an understatement. We are already at 200 emails, and this is just the third video, which in itself it's shocking that just within our Sippendale fam here, there are that many stories already to share. What the is wrong with people? If you have sent a story in, thank you so much. I've even had a few who have just sent me a story and not even wanted me to share, but just appreciated the outlet of having somebody read it and listen and just have it shared. I can't really put into words the feeling of feeling like I'm helping people. So thank you guys so much for supporting this. Okay, let's get started. This is our first story. It says, "My name is Diana, named by my mom who loved Wonder Woman." Oh gosh, I love that. "From what I can tell, my mom was fun-loving, creative, and always ready for an adventure. But I don't actually know much about my mother because she was killed when I was 7 months old. My brother Michael, then 21 months old, and I apparently saw her murdered. But being so young, we don't have any recollection as to who killed her." Oh my gosh. That would have to be one of the toughest feelings, I think. First of all, who does this to somebody in front of their children? Second, I'm sure there's a part of you that, as horrible as it would be to remember something like that, you would want to so that you know who did it and you can solve it. Who would kill a pregnant teenage mother of 2 babies in front of them? Exactly. That's the question I've asked myself for the last 3 decades. Over the years, I've learned to forgive whomever killed her for my own sake, even if my family cannot do the same. And who can blame them? What happened to Melissa K. Sodom on April of 1989 was brutal, sickening, and heartbreaking. Ooh. Now I'm the mother of 2 wonderful daughters, and each day fills a void left behind by my mother's murder. I grow happier and freer as time passes, but my poor grandmother grows sadder and sadder. Each day she gets closer to her own end, the more hope she loses that we will ever find who killed Missy. Missy was the firstborn of 3, and only 1 child remains to my grandmother. Oh my gosh, your grandmother, I just want to hug her. When Melissa's little sister Melanie died in 2020, their brother Brian had a mental breakdown. The entire family has been torn apart by this homicide and by the many tragedies that have followed. I myself have been clean for 16 years, but other close family members struggle with addiction and depression because of this unsolved case. Oh my gosh, that is so powerful. It just goes to show the residual effects that something like this does to a family as a whole, not just the victim, but everybody who has to try to live their life after this happens. I'm so sorry your family is struggling so much. I'm hopeful we will solve this case in my lifetime, but for my grandmother, time is running out. I'd love for her to find some peace, justice, and closure in her life. If there is anything you can do to help our family, we will be forever grateful and would be honored to pay it forward to the next family. Thank you so much for your time." Oh my gosh, my heart just breaks for your family and of course your mother or your grandmother. She deserves to know what happened to her baby. Off the top of my head, while I'm thinking what can I do to help, I'd love to help in any way I can. The podcast called Somebody Knows Something is just jumping out at me. I can definitely look into seeing if I am able to contact anybody and get you guys connected. If this is a route that you would want to go, please email me and let me know, because I would definitely love to see what I can do to help in any way I can. This is our next story. It says, "Hi Sherilyn, my name is Claire and you can use my name in your story." Hi Claire. "I live in a very small town in southern US, about 2,000 people, and I've always considered it very safe. We don't lock our doors or our cars. My husband knows pretty much everyone in town, and even though I've only lived here 3 years, I basically know everyone through him. We live on the hill with 3 other houses, and the middle school is located directly across the street from us. One family moved in next door about a year after my husband moved into our house, and the other family and the man we share a carport with have all lived there since before my husband moved in. Our house is considered a duplex, but it's really more of a standalone house with a detached mother-in-law suite that is connected to us by our carport, did I just say carport, and driveway. Okay, I get it. So the in-law suite is connected to the carports in the driveway. We live in the standalone house. The man who lives in the other unit has always been a little too friendly, but I always chalked it up to being lower intellectual functioning and thought he just wasn't very good at reading social cues. Around a year ago, he started bringing our 3 kids ice cream about once every 2 weeks, just like a box of drumsticks or popsicles, nothing major. After a while, the frequency increased to once or more a week. About 6 months ago, he bought our kids actual items, including a nightgown for my middle daughter. We made her throw it away, and my husband firmly told him he was not to buy the kids anything. Good call. A nightgown. He has a dog, so he's frequently outside walking the dog while my kids are playing. We have a big shared backyard, so he will sometimes talk to the kids while they're on the trampoline or near the edge of the woods behind our house. About a month ago, my middle daughter, who's 10 years old, the one he'd bought the nightgown for, was a little deeper in the woods, maybe about 50 feet past the tree line, while my older daughter was inside with me and my son and husband were at basketball practice. The neighbor followed her into the woods. I was inside, so I didn't know what was happening. All of a sudden, she busted in the door and was in a lot of distress, and she told me I was in the woods and the neighbor asked me if he could pay me $5 to lick my feet. What the? My 2 daughters have a history of trauma from their biological mom's boyfriend, so they are very sensitive to anything remotely creepy. Oh my gosh. She was having a full-on panic attack at this point. I feel like I'm about to have a full-on panic attack. I remained calm. Oh, your next line, I remain calm. I'm a social worker and I work with trauma, so I'm very aware of how my reactions impact others, and I try to always remain calm and pragmatic in crisis situations. Well, I clearly need to take a page from your book and just like process that. That is such a responsible way of thinking. I'm just reading it and ready to fly down there. In my head, I was raging. I can't imagine. Oh, I got all the kids inside and locked our doors and shut our curtains. I immediately called my husband and told him what happened, and he said as soon as he got home, he would go confront the neighbor. After he did this, I just felt like that wasn't enough. I called the police and told them what happened and asked if it was reportable. Like I mentioned before, I'm a social worker, so I have to report child abuse a lot. Usually it would be reported to the state police hotline, but I wanted something done right away, so I called the local PD. They told me it was absolutely reportable and had an officer come out and take my statement. The next day, they set up a forensic interview with my 2 daughters. Based on the info my daughters gave them, I don't know what all of it was because the only people who have access to the interview are the people conducting it and the police watching it. They asked us to call our neighbors and have them also bring their daughters to the station. After the interviews, the police officer took me and the dad of the other family outside and told us he was very concerned. He said the girls told him they've caught him stealing their shoes and socks and taking them into the shack in the woods. He's also been caught sniffing my girls' shoes by the neighbor. The police officer also told us that he believes the man is a peeping Tom and likely has pictures of all the girls on our street on his phone that he's taken through the windows. I was horrified. I just broke down and cried. Oh, mama. He asked us if we wanted the cops to go and try to talk to him that night, which would tip him off and give him time to destroy evidence, or if we wanted them to wait and build a stronger case to try to get an arrest warrant first. The other dad and I agreed that we felt like it was urgent enough and didn't want it to slip through the cracks and asked them to talk to him that night. They attempted to talk to him late that evening, but he did not answer the door. The next day, the other neighbor saw him go with a police officer to his car, but didn't see what happened after that. After a couple days, I called the PD to check on the progress of the case. Here's the kicker. They told me they didn't even have enough evidence to even get a search warrant for his phone, let alone an arrest warrant, and the state police had rejected their hotline report. However, they somehow had enough evidence that they had a legal duty to warn school resource officers of his behavior so that they could keep an eye on kids walking home. I was livid. I am livid for you. This whole time, I had been keeping my landlord up to date on what was happening and what the cops said. I told him we would be moving if he did not evict this man. He finally did find a way to evict him, but had to come up with an elaborate story about all 3 of the houses on the street having to be vacated because he'd sold them. We had to tell our kids that we were actually moving so they didn't slip up and say something about not actually having to move within earshot of the man. The reason the landlord had to do this, I'm assuming, is because the man draws a disability check from the government and could file a discrimination lawsuit if he evicted him without giving a reason. That is so smart. Good on the landlord. For the last month, my kids have barely been able to play outside. Can't go out without an adult, and my daughters freak out every time they see this man. Thankfully, he has to be out of the unit in 3 days, so our lives will be able to go back to normal very soon. Oh my gosh, he's still there? Oh, I feel like we all need to fly out. This is why I am not a social worker and why you are much more suited for the job. Thank you so much for reading my story. I'm sorry it was so long. Don't say sorry. Thank you for sharing it with us. I cannot believe what you are going through. These cases make me rage. This man seriously, obviously needs some help. And to just say you don't have enough evidence for something. Sorry, what? This is why victims don't speak up so many times, because when they do, they're felt like they're not heard. What more does a little child have to do by saying this is what happened for that to be enough evidence? I just can't. I can't. I know you sent this in a couple weeks ago, so I'm praying he is out. You will have to update us, please. Okay, our next story. Hello, Sherilyn. First and foremost, thank you for giving us a platform to get our stories out there. I'm currently listening to your first upload of these, and it's actually you saying that our stories are important that has made me write this. Your stories are important. Please do a trigger warning of domestic abuse for this. Thank you. Trigger warning, there will be reference to domestic abuse. My story starts with an 18-year-old me falling in love with a man who I thought was my true love. I met James from a dating site on February 26, 2009. After just 3 months of us dating, we decided to move in together. We got a nice house and everything was going well until August 29th came around, which is my birthday, and he started to change. I wasn't allowed to go out in my dress that my mom bought for me for this meal out with everybody. To stop an argument, I decided to change. After this, he just completely changed, and there was an argument every time I left the house to see people. I'm usually a very outgoing woman. Then came the constant texts and phone calls I'd get while I was out. I'd also have to send selfies to prove where I was. Oh my gosh, I am very triggered right now. This sounds like I'm reading about my very own experience in a very unhealthy abusive relationship. The first time he actually laid a hand on me was March 20th, 2010. By this point, we were engaged, and I have to admit, I was young in love. It only got worse from here on out. He'd hit me, punch me, bite me, use sexual things as punishment for certain behaviors. It was October 31st when it all went too far and I decided enough was enough. We'd had another argument about me going out to the point where I was put in the hospital that night because of him. Oh my gosh. For a few months I stayed because my mom said that I was overreacting and it wasn't that bad. Ooh. She finally agreed when I recorded an argument with him and him choking me to the point I passed out that it was time he left. I live with what he had done to me every day. Because of him, I now have scoliosis, PTSD, and leg spasms from the abuse. What's so awful about abuse situations is this happens. You finally get out of this situation, but those effects live on with you forever, and it's almost like you're reminded every single day of that trauma that you went through, especially when you've got physical reminders of what this person did to you. I'm so sorry this happened to you. You didn't deserve any of it. After I left, I got him put in jail for 2 years for the abuse and stalking afterwards. Again, two years for these people. What? It didn't seem like enough to me neither, but it gave me a chance to move out of the house and away from him. I honestly feel lucky to have gotten out with my life. If it wasn't for the support of my family and friends, I don't know where I would be today. I hope this story hasn't upset you in any way, as I know some of these can be really hard, and I've debated burdening you with my past, but I want people to know they can be free. Thank you for all of your videos, and much love to you and your family. With love, Sarah. Oh my gosh, Sarah. First, please don't apologize. Of course, these stories are really hard, especially the ones that I can personally relate to, and it brings up things that I've experienced in my life. But that's, to me, really important to acknowledge and talk about, because like you said, there could be people watching right now who need to hear that their life is important and they are important and they need to get out of these situations, and that no one is worth staying in a relationship like this for. Please don't feel like you are a burden for sharing this at all. It is so important, and thank you for being brave enough to do that. All right, our next story. Dear Cheryl, I love your channel. I am not a native English speaker, so please excuse any mistakes. Oh, you good girl. The story I want to tell you is about a scandal that happened in my small town in Germany back in 1993. I was 11 by that time when a murder happened at my school. It was a small school, so you kind of knew everybody from passing by. Sandro was 4 years older and an outsider. He tried to fit in and tried to make friends with some school bad boys. Hendrik, Sebastian, and Andreas. They liked heavy metal, dressing up as goths with long black cloaks, dark eyeliner, pentagrams. You get the picture. Remember when I called them pentagons? They even had a band they called Absurd. They didn't like that Sandra wanted to be friends and came up with a horrific plan to kill him. Because he wanted to be their friend? They gave him a note that they wanted to meet him one evening. He thought they would finally accept him into their group, and off he went. They met him in the woods in a hut that belonged to Hendrik's parents. Our town was surrounded by forest and is famous for it, so it was a very secluded spot. They then took him by surprise, tied him to a chair, and strangled him to death. Then they threw him into a pit behind the hut, buried him, and went back home. Oh my gosh. Sandro was reported missing, and it took the police 7 days to find his body and catch the killers. All while they were still going to school with all of us. Oh my gosh. There was massive news coverage back then calling it the Satanist murders. It wasn't a murder with satanic background, but it sells better, doesn't it? You're right. Always have to make it salacious. I mean, it's terrible enough. The worst thing was that Sebastian's mother was a teacher at our school and always said her kid was innocent. She continued to teach after he was convicted for the murder. Oh. Hendrik was the kid of a local politician. No consequences for the father. Hendrik escaped prison at one point, but he was caught. After Hendrik was released from prison for good, he was considered the most famous neo-Nazi leader in Germany. He lives in the US now. What? Again, I mean, I don't know how many times you have to say why. Why? Why do these people get to be released? Andreas kind of disappeared. Perfect. Sandra was an only child and his mother was left on her own. Really, really sad. He had a beautiful grave at our local cemetery, but it was damaged every year by followers of the group. His headstone was repaired many times, but is gone now as far as I remember. Oh gosh. As it happened in Germany, this story is never covered on any true crime channel. There's a lot more to it. Maybe it would inspire you to take a look. Patty. Oh my gosh, I am sickened by the fact that his tombstone is continually being destroyed because of these followers. First off, how awful. It's one thing I never ever understand. The obsession and followers of people who do terrible things. What is the point to continually traumatize and hurt the victim and their loved ones? This is definitely something that I'm going to want to look into more. It's so hard for me to do children's cases, but like even just all of the after effects here, so wrong. Poor Sandro. Thank you for sharing, Patty. It's really touching that after all of these years, even though you weren't related to him and he was just a student at your school, that, you know, you still think about him and you're keeping his name out there and sharing his story to hopefully prevent something like this ever happening again. All right, our last story. Hey, Sherilyn. This is hard for me to share as not many people know about this, but I do feel it's time. So a little backstory. I'm half New Zealander through my dad and half Fijian through my mom. In June 2016, my mom flew home to Fiji to see our family. There was also a rugby game taking place there featuring 2 New Zealand teams. The game took place on the 1st of July, 2016. This night changed my family's lives forever. My mom and aunties had just arrived in Suva from Natty for the rugby game when they got a call from my auntie back in Natty. I really hope I'm saying this right. My brother, who was 24 at the time, had been drinking with friends when his partner showed up. They seemed happy, but very few people knew he was no longer happy in the relationship and had the intention of breaking up with his partner. She somehow caught wind of this and showed up to where my brother was drinking and pulled him away for a chat. He took his drink with him, and when he wasn't looking, she slipped poison into it. He was found crawling through our village begging for help as his body gave up on him. The call my mom received was to let her know her baby had passed away. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. They immediately got back on the road to be at the hospital so they could say goodbye that night, despite my auntie begging them to stay in Suva and watch the game. When they returned to Natty, they drove straight to see him, with the girlfriend standing over him, playing the role of the heartbroken girlfriend. Police were involved, but she bribed them to say it was a suicide. And still to this day, it is seen as a suicide. Oh my gosh. The day his funeral rolled around, everyone attended, including the girlfriend. Later that night, while the family was out celebrating his life, my mom got a call from a different brother. He was a bouncer at a club and was begging my mom to go to the club. She's confused, but went knowing that my brother doesn't beg, and she walked in to find the girlfriend selling herself to men. This is the same night of the funeral, I think, if I'm getting this right. My mom walked up behind her and knocked her out. This girl still walks free, bragging about how she got away with murder. That is so wrong. Oh my gosh, I can't imagine what that feels like to you, knowing that. That's not justice. There's no closure. Thank you for sharing my family's story. Sending you so much love, Tyra. Oh my gosh, I'm speechless right now. I'm so sorry for your family's loss and so sorry this happened to your brother. I feel like it's really important to share stories that also involve men in domestic violence situations because we don't hear about them as often. I feel like we do need to acknowledge those types of situations, speak about them more, and then be supportive, really supportive if you have a friend that's going through something like this and they're a male. You know, maybe if he felt like he could have opened up to his friends, if he felt uncomfortable, maybe he had seen, you know, something in her that he feared and didn't like, and that was part of why he didn't want to be with her anymore, but didn't really speak up to it. So in the situation where he's out with his friends and she shows up, maybe people wouldn't have let that happen because they knew to protect him. Thank you so much for sending this in, Tyra. I'm thinking of you. Thank you to everybody who has submitted something to me and who continue to do so. I'm doing my best to get through them. Like I said, we have so many in the inbox right now. As long as you are all still wanting to hear them though, I will continue sharing them. This is it for me today though. I will see you in the next one. If you haven't already, please don't forget to like and subscribe. It means the world to me. I love and I appreciate you so much. I'll see you in the next video. I will miss you terribly. Until then, make sure to love each other, love yourself, and I will see you soon. Bye.